Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. So, in a previous video, I showed you guys a map in a T-Mobile article where back then T-Mobile claimed these are all the areas where we have 2.5 ultra capacity radios and panels deployed today that we can immediately make use of the Auction 108 spectrum, which is where T-Mobile purchased additional 2.5 licenses. The map that you're seeing on screen in this video is every single inch of the country where they purchased additional 2.5 spectrum, where today likely there is not. In some of these areas you're seeing on screen, there aren't any 2.5 radios deployed yet. So T-Mobile has work to do. There's still run rate, there's still scaling that they can do based on this Auction 108 spectrum. If you guys backtrack to that video that I made with the T-Mobile map, you will see a difference. The T-Mobile map, a lot smaller, magenta. This one, a lot bigger. So there are a lot of areas that T-Mobile can still benefit from expansion, right? You got to think about they're still in the middle of expanding their coverage footprint, where if they go to 10 buck 2, they don't have coverage. Now today, they can build a site, they can add 2.5, and they can provide fixed wireless access, even in the smallest areas. Now, I know there are still some white spots that you're seeing on this map. So there are going to be some areas where they didn't get any 2.5 spectrum in that auction, but that does not mean that they don't own any 2.5 at all. It could mean that, but in some of these areas, they have 2.5 from previously purchasing Sprint. So this is a big deal. This is a big deal for competition across the board, not only wireless, but also against cable. Cable competes in some of these areas. Charter just spent billions of dollars expanding into these rural areas where they previously were the only provider, and they were charging for that. There was a premium charge for them being the only provider and there not being any other option. There may have been another option like in terms of satellite or whatever, but some of that satellite stuff is expensive in itself. So now that T-Mobile has the ability to go in with their $50 price point and then their $30 price point if you bundle with wireless, it's a huge deal for the consumer, and it is a big position for T-Mobile to be in competitive wise. Even at the $50 price point, even if that consumer doesn't want the wireless, they would still pay more than 50% less in some cases than their previous provider. So that's a big deal for competition. That could drive pricing down from cable, depending, of course, if a lot of people switch all of a sudden, that could make cable rethink their strategy. It could bring so much more competition, right? It could get Verizon involved now because they see, hey, T-Mobile's taking all these customers, so let me get to these areas with my C-band, with my 200 megahertz. Let me compete there. And then AT&T as well. AT&T could say, look, we've had DSL customers there that have been poorly served with bad performing networks. Let me give them my FWA and give them a better product. So it's all just creating competition that was not there before in the metro, as well as suburban and these rural areas. So this Auction 108 is a really big deal for T-Mobile, but it's also a big deal for competition across the board. It now allows T-Mobile to expand there. They may have had plans to expand, but they're like, hey, we don't have sufficient mid-band, so let's hold off. Let's wait. But now, Auction 108's over. They are very, very, very close of getting access. They just need the signature of the president, and then the FCC has the authority to grant that license. And then they hit the ground running. They turn it on, with a flip of a switch, so to speak. Like I said in the previous video, that might take a few more days optimization, but it's a flip of a switch because the radios are already on the towers. Then they increase the bandwidth on the previous map that you guys have seen instantly across that footprint. And then the map that you're seeing in this video today, then they get working on those areas They turn up sites where they didn't have 2.5 before. Now they have it with Auction 108. Now they go and deploy there. They say, okay, part of the 2024 capital, 2025, we're going to spend $2 billion deploying, X amount of sites in this area because we now have sufficient 2.5. So that's just all around a big deal, a bigger deal than some are realizing, right? Before this Auction 108 spectrum, it was really just Verizon that had like sufficient spectrum to go and compete in these areas. Outside of the big PEAs, the smaller PEAs, Verizon has 200 megahertz of C-band spectrum. They would have they would have competed against cable, but then again, it would have just been two players. Now with this Auction 108 spectrum, now there's cable, then, Verizon, whenever they get there with C-band, and now you got T-Mobile, and now that AT&T is a bit more serious about FWA, you potentially have 4 players that are now going into these rural areas. AT&T and Verizon, you can take, you can almost be for certain that they compete there because they're likely in some of these areas the only ones that have towers to compete. T-Mobile's still growing their footprint. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll give them credit where credit's due. They are bigger today than they were, say, 5 years ago, the network. But there are still small markets in these rural areas that only have Verizon and AT&T access. It's just a fact. So if Verizon and AT&T can get C-band on those towers first before T-Mobile gets in, then it's free game. FWA, wireless, whatever, business, enterprise, there's now more capacity to pull from. So cable is in trouble here as well. Cable may have to rethink their strategy, their thesis and what they're putting into the market. Oh, fixed wireless access is a short-term, mid-term play. It's going to run out of capacity. Those customers will be back. That is not a competitive response. That is a thought. That is a thesis. I think that might happen. But we've seen that 3 years in, these FWA players continue growing. And there's other methods that can be used to continue further driving up capacity. Small cells, millimeter wave can still be used even in these small market rural areas. More tower sites can be deployed. It's not that difficult in these small areas to provide adequate capacity. In some of these smaller towns, there might be a population of max 10,000. You can easily handle that traffic without problem. And you can very easily strategize and plan to further boost capacity to easily handle that. If it's wireless, fixed wireless, whatever, you can build in those areas small cells, perhaps new towers, to bring sufficient amounts of capacity to further grow FWA and to maintain the base you got. It's a bit harder to do that at the metro level because there's so much traffic running through the core and the network, and it takes a while when you got markets that have millions of customers. But then these smaller market in rural areas, if you put up, let's say 10 towers and there's 2,000 people, that is adequate. And that 10 towers might be too much for that, but that's adequate, sufficient amounts of capacity to keep that customer long term. So leave your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think about this map. This is a good map. Pause the video if you need to look at it. It's a great, gives you great understanding where they can compete, right? Look at this, look at the map. Like, for example, if you look at the right top of the map, that's Maine. T-Mobile has ton of new 2.5 there. So now they're probably going to go build 2.5 out there. They gain some more in Nebraska, the Montanas. So a lot of rural areas, they gain a lot more spectrum that they didn't have before. So I think that's understated today. I think that brings huge momentum over the next 3 years. I don't have to just look into 2024. This is going to be part of a build plan that goes, I would say, well into 2026, 2027. They have to continue investing and building. They got to build. There's no ways around, there's no way around it. They got to build. They got to add more sites, and they got to get this 2.5 to a real big scale. They covered 300 million pops today, but there's probably another 10, 20 million pops that they can continuously build 2.5 over the next several years to really get that FWA to scale. And in some areas, I'll be honest, it just won't make sense to build the 2.5 because in these smaller towns, the population size is just too small. So they can probably handle FWA on just PCS and low band. Very possible. But it's good to see nonetheless. It's new spectrum that's getting put onto the network. It brings new competition to a lot of these areas that have been praying and hoping for more competition for a long time. This also helps close the digital divide as well. It brings new competition to the schools that need internet. I mean, it's just really a big deal of where this goes. Not only for T-Mobile, like I said, but it also brings all the other competition to the table because now they have to compete because before there was no competition. So like I said, leave all your comments in the comment section. If you are new to the channel, make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you are notified when content goes out. Follow my social media outlets for more updates. This is Tyrone with Tech Life, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.